Well, before I start, can I thank the organizers and the staff and Christopher and Sam. It's a very nice conference. Thanks for setting up. Thanks for inviting me and everybody else. Thank you. Okay. You can say the start now.
Do I still introduce you?
Yes, you can.
Yeah, so just make sure I get the titles right. So our next speaker is Claudio Baccigalupo, and he's going to talk about Rails 5, awesome features and breaking changes.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Claudio, and I live in Los Angeles, and I'm a manager of software engineers at Fullscreen. I've been writing Ruby and Rails since Rails 1.2, and I'm a contributor of Rails. And today I'm going to talk about Rails 5, which is the next major release of Rails. And actually, I went and looked at when the development of Rails 5 started, and it's been actually 16 months. That's when the latest Rails 4.2 was released. So there's actually a lot. Almost 10,000 commits by almost 1,000 people. And probably you've heard about some of the features like Action Cable or Rails API. And it's not just Rails that has evolved, also the entire ecosystem. Like meanwhile, we've had a new version of Ruby, of Postgres, new version of Sprockets, Turbolinks. Like there's really a lot to cover. But I don't have 6 hours, or you would probably fall asleep after lunch right away. And so what I decided to do is instead focus on the experience that I've had so far. I've used Rails 5 beta in production for the last 3 months. And so I'm going to talk about what I learned. So really the title of this talk should be my personal list of its most useful features. Because you might have read blog posts about Rails 5 or listen to podcasts and they tell you what's inside, but once you start using it, you're gonna come up with your own list. And so here it goes. I have 15 of them, so keep up with me. Okay, so let's start with the first one. By the way, these slides are on speakerdeck.com. And they have the links to the PR and the author of each one of these features, so that if you want to go and actually look at the PR, it's right there. Okay, this one says, allow one or true for acceptance validation. So this is what it means. Rails has, Active Record has validates acceptance of that you can use, for instance, to make sure that the user accepts the terms and conditions. The problem is that in Rails 4, if you have this code validates terms acceptance true, and then you try to create a user and you say terms true, you expect this to work, but actually it doesn't in Rails 4. You get validation failed. The reason is that the only way to make this work in Rails 4 is to pass the string 1, because that's what, when you submit a web form and you have a checkbox, that's the value that it's passed. So if you do it through the web form, it works. But if you just do it like this, it doesn't. And so this has been improved and fixed in Rails 5, so now you can just write that code and it's going to actually create the users. So it's a nice improvement. Number 15. Okay, number 14 by Akira Matsuda, somewhere here. Let's see. Okay, anyways, I have to admit I haven't actually used this in production, but I think this is really cool if you want to convince your co-workers that they need to upgrade to Rails 5. So up to Rails 4, the file names of your partials, they had to be valid Ruby identifiers, so underscore, and then you cannot start like with a digit, or for instance, you cannot use emojis. In Rails 5 you can. So if you want to call your partial underscore cap emoji.html.arb, you can do it. And then you can use that as your partial and I think this is great. So, a big round of applause for Akira. Cool. I should just close here. Anyways, going on. 13. Add migration versioning. Okay, so let me show you what this means. In Rails 4, when you write your migrations by hand or using a generator, say for instance, in this case we have that activities belong to a user, and so we have this reference, you have to explicitly write that you want an index on this user ID column. Or if you have timestamps like created at and updated at, you explicitly have to say, I want these to be not nil. I want them to be required. Now, these are cases that are kind of common. Like normally when you have an association, you want an index, and when you have timestamps, you want those values there. So in Rails 5, this has changed, so you don't have to write those options. Those are by default now. So references have an index by default, timestamps are not nil by default. Now, how does Rails know if what you've just written is like an old style migration or a new style migration? It's because in Rails 5, migrations inherit from this class that now it's called Active Record Migration 5.0. So when Rails runs your migration, if it sees this, then it says, well, I have to add the index and I have to add not like null false to the timestamp. And if it's not there, then it understands that it's an old migration, so it expects you to write all those options. Going on, this is perform CSRF tokens, and it's a new security feature of Rails 5. So the Rails comes with content script request forgery protection, which means that if somebody else tries to submit a form to your website, externally, like a hacker for instance, then Rails is not gonna run that form because it expects something that's called an authenticity token. So this was already in place in Rails 4. So there is a slight change for a very specific case that's now also in Rails 5, and it's the following case. So imagine you have a user who is a legit user of your website, and this user is trying to update the user, let's say 1, but this person edits the HTML and instead just changes users 1 to users 42. So instead of trying to update his own user, he's trying to update somebody else's user. Now if you submit this form in Rails 4, the authenticity token is there. So the action controller is not going to complain. But clearly, this token is not the token that is meant for that action and that method. So this is the improvement of Rails 5. You can have a different authenticity token for each form, and it depends on the action and the method. So if you try to do the same thing, you just edit the method and you try to reuse the authenticity token, is not going to work. So this is a good additional security protection that comes from Rails 5. Okay, I'm just going. I don't know if you guys are following or just sleeping after lunch. Can you shout or something that you're alive? Also, if you want to just give a shout out every time you hear a good feature, that's good. Ability to return error responses in JSON. Okay. So this is what it means. Imagine your application responds to JSON, but then you get an exception. For instance, somebody is trying to get an endpoint that doesn't exist. So just a 404 error. The problem is that in Rails 4, the response that you get is actually in HTML. So if you have a client that only understands JSON, it's not going to understand this response. This has been improved in Rails 5. So you have now the possibility to set this configuration, debug, exception, response format. If you set it to API, then even when you get an exception, the exception itself is in JSON. So this is better for your client, doesn't have to also understand HTML. So you have status 404, error not found, and so on. And now we get into the top 10. Add has secure token to active record. So sometimes you have to generate tokens. An example is you want to give an API token to your users. How do you do this in Rails 4? First of all, you have to add this token to the database, so you can generate a migration, and you say token, and then you can say string and unique, and then you get your migration. This has become a little shorter in Rails 5. You can just say token. Basically, you don't have to say string unique. That is the same. And you still get a token string that's unique. Even better than that is the code that you have to write in the model. So more or less, in Rails 4, if you want to generate a unique secure token for each user, more or less the code would look like this. You would have a before create, and then you would first have to come up with an algorithm, for instance, a QRandom, then you would generate it, you would have to think about the size of this token, then you would have to go in the database to make sure this token doesn't exist already, and then just, write basically all of this code. So you see all of this is Rails 4. In Rails 5 it's just has a secure token. That's all you have to write, which basically does exactly the same thing. And this method has secure token, also accepts some parameters. For instance, the name of the token, by default is token, but you can say name, API token or things like that. So it becomes much more convenient and also shorter. Going on. I made this progress, so wait. Accept a collection in fresh, wet, and stale. Okay, so Action Controller has a very easy way to add caching. It has these two methods, fresh when, and then stale question mark. They are basically one the opposite of the other. So a user asks, in this case for an activity, so the show method, and then Rails gives back this activity, and then the next time the user asks for the same activity, Rails is gonna check, was this activity updated? No, it hasn't been updated since your last request, so I'm just gonna tell the browser to render the version that the browser already has. So to use this method fresh when for a single activity, it's just fresh when activity. But if you want to use this in a list, for instance in the index, then you have actually to write a little more code where you're saying, well, when the user asks again for a list of activities, I have to go and check that the activity that was updated most recently has not changed. So basically that's the code that you have to write in Rails 4. In Rails 5, it's just a little shorter. You can just use basically the same syntax. You just say fresh when add activities, and it's equivalent. It just, you don't have to remember to write all that code. So that's what happens. Fresh when and stale, question mark, now also accept a collection. Number 8, add a hidden field on the collection radio buttons. Collection radio buttons is a helper that comes with action view that lets you print out a set of radio buttons. Oh, sorry. So in this case, imagine you have an activity and you want the user to choose when are you running, and your options are morning, afternoon, and evening. You can use this helper, collection radio buttons, and then it's going to print those radio buttons for you. Now the problem in Rails 4 is that if your user doesn't select any of those radio buttons and just submits the form as it is, basically you're going to have an error. You're going to have a 400 BAT request page. And that's because if you don't select any radio button, the parameters that are going to be submitted don't include any activity at all. So basically Rails is going to complain, you're trying to update an activity and you're not giving me any activity. This has been changed in Rails 5. In Rails 5, the collection radio buttons automatically add a hidden field with the empty value. And the goal is that if you try to submit without selecting any value, Rails is still going to submit activity period nil, and so your submission will not fail. It will just select nothing, but at least the form is going to work. So this is going to work in Rails 5. Number 7, require belongs to by default. This is sorry, this is kind of straightforward. Let's say that an activity belongs to a user, and then you say activity create, and you don't specify a user. In Rails 4, this works, but it can be a little counterintuitive because you're saying, wait, every activity belongs to a user, and here there's no user, and then maybe down the line you try to render or display all the users of every activity, and then you get an error. So Rails 5 is a little stricter, and when you use belongs to user, it's going to be required by default. So in Rails 5, if you try to create an activity without a user, you're going to get an error right away. If you want the old behavior, you can do belongs to user optional true, but I think this is a better default. Okay, I don't have time. Okay, we have time, but there are only 6 left. Add Rails command infrastructure. So remember how sometimes you have to type Rails server, and then it's rake, db migrate, and then it's like Rails console, and you always have to remember which one is which. Okay, you don't have to do that anymore in Rails 5. It's Rails.
Yeah.
Thank you. So you can just do Rails, and it works for all of them. Even better, there are even new ones, like Rails app update to update your configuration files to the new version. Rails dev cache is basically lets you turn on and off caching while developing, so you don't have to go and edit your configuration files and then revert them. And then initializers and restart. So there are new ones, and also some of the existing tasks have been improved. For instance, Rails routes now accepts options, so you can just restrict the routes to certain regular expressions or certain controllers. And Rails test now behaves a little more like RSpec. It can do fail fast, so fail stop as soon as one test fails, or you can pass the line that you want to test. So that's been also improved a lot. So this is just Rails from now on. Okay, top 5. I put this in top 5. Don't convert empty arrays to nils when deep munging params, because if you've never heard of deep munge, you are lucky, because it was something that was really tricky, and it was actually broken in Rails 4. So let me tell you what this means. Okay, so let's go back to activity. Let's say that you have an activity. Activity can have many guests. So you can pass an array of IDs of all the guests of this activity. So let's say that you just make a post, and you say, well, this specific activity does not have any guests. So you're going to pass an empty array. In Rails 4, for security reasons, it even tells you right there in the comment that empty arrays, or arrays with nil, are just converted to nil. The problem is that if you submit a nil, it's like not submitting anything. So if you had some guest before and you just submit the empty array, you expect the guest to become empty, but actually it doesn't work. So you have to hack your way around, because you cannot just submit an empty array. So you either hack your way around, or you upgrade to Rails 5, because in Rails 5 it works. You can now pass an empty array, and that is recognized as actually, no, I mean to say no guest, and it's going to work. Okay, going on, number 4. Deprecate implicit behavior of halting callback chains by returning false. So, oh wow. Just because it's Okay, so this is what it means. Imagine you have a user, and then whenever you create a user, you want to make sure that unless it's specified, the user is not an admin. So you have a callback, and you say, well, if it's not set, let's just say admin false. Now, if you try to create a user in Rails 4, this is not going to work. It's just going to tell you record not saved. It's a little confusing. Why is that? That is because you have a callback that is returning the value false. It's the last value of the method. So in Rails 4, if any callback, any before callback returns false, that implicitly stops the entire action and the entire callback chains. So this is one of those behaviors that's very like implicit, magic of Rails, but it's a little bit too implicit. So it has changed. So from Rails 5, the value that your callback returns doesn't matter in terms of the chain. So even if you return false, the user is still going to be created. There is still a way, if you want to have the old behavior, you have to be explicit. You have to throw the symbol abort, and then it's going to have the old behavior. But I think especially for newcomers, this is going to just cause less confusion and headaches. Oops. Top 3. I need like a drum roll here. Okay. Initial implementation of active job async adapter. Okay, so let's see what this means. Imagine that you have a user, and whenever you create a user, you want to send an email to the user, like welcome to RubyConf. So in production, you probably have something like Sidekick or something like that that processes these jobs. In development, if you don't have it, if you don't specify anything, especially in test, then the adapter that's going to be used, it's called inline adapter. That basically takes that code and runs it right away. So if you're sending your email takes a while, you actually have to wait during that time in your test or in development. Now, clearly you could also use Sidekick locally. You can install Sidekick on your machine and then it would work. But it's a little maybe too much, because then you have to open maybe another terminal and remember to write Sidekick, and probably you don't need the entire power of Sidekick, like with all the queues and everything. You just want this job to be run asynchronously. And so that's when this new adapter that's been introduced in Rails 5 called async adapter comes, and it's helpful because all this does is just it spawns a new thread where it runs your code, and that's it. So it doesn't have the entire power of Sidekick. Like if you restart your app, it's not going to be there anymore, but it's really useful because it gives you this very simple way of running your jobs without having to install like Redis and Sidekick, all of that, and it's still asynchronous. So I found this very powerful when I'm developing. Okay, number 2. Now, you might find it weird that this is so high in my chart, but this is one of those things that when I saw this commit, I was like, yeah, whatever, it doesn't matter. But then when I was using it, it's like, oh, this is really useful. So this is what it means. If you look at your log in Rails 4, you might have noticed that the colors are just like pink, blue, which is nice, but it doesn't really help you like browse to the log files. It's just, I can distinguish a line from the next, but that's it. In Rails 5, these colors are a little more useful. If you have an insert, it's in green. If you have a delete, it's in red. If you have select, it's in blue. And I found this really useful when you have like to just maybe view a big log in production and you're like, who deleted this user? And you just go, oh, that's the red line. And it's just really, really fast and convenient. Okay, can I get a drum roll now for number 1? Okay, number 1. Number 1, I put this commit here. This is not the only one, but my point is the performance of Rails 5 5 is better than the performance of Rails 4. So if you just need a single reason to go tell your boss, hey, we have to upgrade to Rails 5, you can definitely use the emoji cat, but I suggest you use this one because the code has been improved. There are commits like this that, to give you an example, here I'm just reproducing something that's part of that commit. I'm just benchmarking URL for, which is a method that is invoked many times in your application, just to calculate from, let's say, the activity number 1, the URL being /activities/1. So just this very simple case, you go from 41,000 instances a second to a 14% speed improvement, and this is in a very simple case. Like you can see more complex cases where it's like 40%. And there's a ton of improvements in terms of memory management, and also given by the fact that Rails 5 requires Ruby 2.2 by default, which has also been improved. So in general, you're going to get all these, and it's really for free. Like you don't have to upgrade your application or anything like that. So I would say this is, my number 1 because it's something that you just get for free. And so I want to thank all of these committers. And I don't know how I'm going with time, but that's pretty much it. So I hope I gave you some knowledge, and I can give you some reason to upgrade to Rails 5. The release candidate is going to be out soon, but you can already try the beta, and then that's it. Thank you.
Questions?
Hi. Isn't there a risk of spawning threads for an operation that you already know to be slow? Like, isn't it possible to spawn so many threads that you kill your application? And is there some kind of warning there?
In which case?
So this relates to, I think, number 3.
Async?
Yeah, so if that spawns a thread and you suddenly get a lot of requests or whatever that kick off new jobs, isn't there a small risk there? Like, shouldn't there be some kind of warning?
Yeah, sorry, maybe I wasn't clear. The async adapter is not meant to be used in production. It's meant to be used locally in development. So it's solving your issues locally, but I completely agree with you. In production, you should still have, Sidekick or things like that. Actually, one thing that I want to mention is that if you use Sidekick 4, there is an open pull request so that once Rails 5 is out, it's not going to be eagerly loading your entire app. So basically, you don't have to restart it every time you check your code locally. But for now, I think this is a good solution.
You mentioned at the start about podcasts. Do you have some suggestions of good podcasts talking about Rails?
Bikeshed.fm. That's what I suggest. Thank you.